Sometimes, no matter what you do, you're not able to catch all the exceptions that can possibly be thrown. In other words, you can't anticipate every exception. You may actually miss one, or you may have defined only named exceptions to be caught, and then another one is thrown that you didn't name, and it will get skipped by your try-catch. When that happens, there is another part to a try-catch called finally, which is a third block you can use, and that will be executed if it's there and none of the other exception statements will work. Let me demonstrate how that works, because I know it sounded kind of confusing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a try, and I'm going to put a index out of bounds error into a program, just like we did earlier. In fact, I'm going to do this very simply to save time and trouble. All right, so that's clearly going to cause an exception. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to catch it, but we're going to try to catch it with an arithmetic exception, if I can spell that right, which is what divide by 0 is. Here's the finally. Whoops, it's a block, so I've got to put it in. Whoops. So let's see what happens here. Let's compile the program. No errors, and let's close. Now, what should have happened, it should have gone to the try-catch. Let's try it a different way. It's interesting that it didn't. Oh, it did go to the finally. Let's do that again. Watch this again. Notice the error right here. Couldn't handle the exception. So the program ended. That only happens when you have a finally statement in your program. Did it really help anything? No. The program still crashed, and so it wasn't very much good. Now, having shown you that, we need to spend just a minute or two talking about how things should be dealt with. What really should happen is your programs should be able to figure out the exceptions before it gets to a point where an exception is thrown. We're going to talk about assertions in just a minute in another lesson, and that will kind of help the situation. But in a lot of times, especially with programs that are much more sophisticated than this, you should be checking your input for correct values before you even give that input to a piece of code that could cause an exception to be thrown. However, I just wanted to demonstrate that if you do have an exception that cannot be caught, then the finally will catch it at the very end before your program ends. One situation where this works is when you're trying to handle resources such as connections to databases. That's too advanced for this course. But in that situation, you want to be able to fix that or resolve a open database connection before your program ends. Otherwise, you'll have what's called a memory leak. And one of the ways to do that is via a finally statement, which would let loose of that resource. You could close it out or make it null and keep the memory leak from occurring. But anyway, I just wanted to demonstrate how the finally works. You don't need to use it all that often. You're better off using the catch and finding all your exceptions, or use a generic exception object to catch anything that could possibly come up. And that's the best way to go. But now you've seen the finally, so you understand how it works in a program.